The Golden State Warriors had a very, very, very rough ending to their 2019 season. And they've had a rough beginning to the 2020 season as well. The future of this team is very uncertain, with many fans and analysts questioning whether or not 2019 marked the end of their dynasty. I've already discussed how the Warriors became a dynasty. This time, let's talk about why it may be over. After all, nothing lasts forever. The first thing to say about the Warriors is that this season is almost certainly not going to be a championship year. Even if Klay and Steph come back in March or even mid-February, it's difficult to imagine a scenario in which the Warriors win the 2020 title. Their team is really bad outside of their top 4 guys, and they play in the Western Conference. It would be a miracle for them to make the playoffs, and if they do make it somehow, they would be a lower seed. It's highly unlikely they are going to go on a championship run from the 6th, 7th, or 8th seed. Moving on to the 2021 season and beyond, is the Warriors dynasty over? Do they have another run left in them? Well, even with Klay returning and presumably back to his old self, there are still major questions about this team's viability going forward. First off, their bench is really bad. Their bench was bad last year, and is even worse without Iguodala and Shaun Livingston. Just look at their roster. Do you even know who half these guys are? This isn't the same strength and numbers team they were a few years ago. In the future, they don't really have the cap space to add quality bench guys. If you look at the NBA's projected salary cap, and then the Warriors' payroll, they are over the cap with just their top 4 guys for the next several seasons. In 2022, they'll finally be under the cap, but I don't think it's a stretch to predict they'll throw a bag at Steph, which would put them over the cap again. When the Warriors won their first title, Draymond and Klay were still on their rookie contracts, while Steph was still under that cheap $44 million deal he signed due to ankle injuries. In 2014-15, those three combined to earn about $15 million, or about 20% of the salary cap. That's why the Warriors could afford so many quality role players. This is no longer the case. Steph, Klay, and Dre were underpaid back then. Now, they're getting max contracts. It's hard to construct a team with quality depth when you have 3 or 4 max contract players. Of course, one could argue that when a team has 4 All-Stars, what bench surrounding them doesn't matter because the amount of talent will overwhelm opponents. This is true to a certain extent, but remember, we saw in 2018, when the Warriors didn't have Iguodala, the Rockets almost beat them. And instead of one of those 4 All-Stars being Kevin Durant, it's D'Angelo Russell, an obvious downgrade. The Warriors won't have anything more than draft picks and salary cap exceptions to fill out the roster around their aging core. This is why they worked so hard to keep Kevin Durant. They were going to face these challenges no matter what. The question was whether it would happen with Durant or without him, and how expensive it became. Speaking of aging core, another thing worth noting is that this core of players is getting older. By the time the 2021 postseason comes, Curry will be 33, Thompson and Green will both be 31. A question worth asking is, how well will these guys age? Well, we know Draymond probably won't age well if last season is anything to go by, but what about Curry and Thompson? Conventional wisdom tells us that they should both age well, because their games aren't heavily reliant on athleticism, but rather supreme shooting. Keep in mind though, both of these guys, under Steve Kerr, run around a lot in order to get open for those shots. Neither one of them jumps out of the gym, but they still are professional athletes. They still rely on their athleticism. Also, I'm no expert, but I've theorized that how well an NBA player ages depends on how well they take care of their bodies and their injury history, not just their playing style. Take LeBron James for example. His playing style heavily relied on his athletic ability, but he was still able to age well into his 30s because he takes good care of his body and is almost never injured. Carmelo Anthony, on the other hand, never took as much care and consequently fell out of the NBA for a little while, despite being about the same age as LeBron and playing the same number of seasons. Now, I don't know how well Klay or Curry treat their bodies, but in the case of Curry, we do know about his injury history. His ankle issues required 2 surgeries early in his career, and he sprained the MCL in each of his knees, which caused him to miss time in separate postseasons. Here's the thing with Curry's ankle issues. They will never go away. He is always going to be plagued by them. Your body doesn't heal as well as you get older. Is it possible that when he's 35, he hurts his ankle and isn't able to recover from it as well as he could at 28? I don't know. Just a possibility I'm throwing out there. With the weaker bench and a no Kevin Durant, the grind of getting through an 82-game season healthy is even harder. That was the point of Durant, by the way. It's not that the Warriors couldn't win games without him. It's that, over the course of a season or series, Durant ensured Curry and Thompson weren't asked to do so much that they eventually wore down. Going back to Draymond, though he had a resurgent playoff run, he was incredibly poor during most of the regular season last year. He couldn't score, he couldn't shoot, he killed the spacing for his teammates. He was at times an offensive liability. Defensively, he didn't play up to par either until the postseason. He also turned 30 in 2020. He recently signed a max extension. Is he worth it today? Maybe. As for tomorrow, it's complicated. Green was overweight during the 2018-19 regular season, and his defense suffered as a result. His rotations were slower, and guards were blowing by him on drives. In 2019, we got a glimpse of what an older, less athletic Draymond may look like. An offensively limited player who's merely good, not exceptional on defense. And that player is absolutely not worth the max. If there's one person on the Warriors who could be used as trade bait for a package including younger, cheaper players who can help them sustain success, it's Draymond. Speaking of which, I guess that is a good way to transition to the last section of this video. I'm being really bleak about the Warriors' future, but is there any way they can retool the roster? Well, one idea that has been tossed around for a while is trading D'Angelo Russell. That's pretty much what people have been saying since the day he signed with them. It makes sense. Trading D'Lo, or perhaps Draymond, is one of the few ways the Warriors could fill out the roster with quality players. Due to little flexibility to add quality pieces around the core, it's unrealistic for the Warriors to keep all 4 players and build a deep roster. We know they are not going to trade Curry or Thompson, which means the one that may go will be Draymond or D'Lo. The Warriors could finesse a team in a trade. They're a smart organization, so they're more than capable of doing that. Another possibility is maybe some of the young guys on the team develop into quality players. Eric Pascal has been a pleasant surprise for them so far this season. Despite his success, I think it's unreasonable to expect any of their other late first round or second round draft picks to turn out to be great players. Another thing the Warriors could hope for is that they sign a guy on a minimum or mid-level that can outperform his contract. What are the odds of that happening though? The Warriors are no longer the clear-cut favorites to win the title, so why would a guy take a pay cut to sign with them? That type of deal may lure a rotation-worthy player, but most likely not a massive difference maker. And lastly, they have their draft pick for next year. Well, actually, they sent their pick to the Nets in the trade, but the pick is number 1 to 20 protected, so they're gonna keep it. The Warriors will have a worse record than usual. They may even shut Klay, Curry, and Draymond down in order to get a higher pick. I'ma be sick if they end up with the number 1 overall pick. This draft pick, wherever it ends up, could prolong the Warriors' dynasty, similar to what drafting Kawhi did for the Spurs. Honestly, maybe Klay and Steph getting injured won't be so bad in the end. Regardless of whether or not they can win any more championships, I think we can safely say that the age of the Warriors' invincibility is finally over. The roster that remains will probably still be good, but not the prohibitive favorite. The future of the NBA is no longer a foregone conclusion, and we should all be happy about that.